Hello and good morning, friends. Today I want to talk to you about watertight risers and why do you want them on your septic system? What are the benefits of having a watertight riser? Why would you not have a watertight riser? What types of risers exist out there? Let's get into it. So, a riser, what is it, right? The riser is going to be this large thing right here, right? So it's just going to be a big opening on a septic system. Generally, we refer to them as manhole risers, and the reason why is because they're as big as for somebody to be able to get into, right? The purpose of the riser is actually to let you clean the tank more efficiently and maintain it in a proper manner. The benefit of it is that it will generally go in the middle of the tank. There are some tanks where the type of lid you're either going to get on the front or back, but because it's a larger hole, you're able to move the pipe around and get a better cleaning of the system. So most risers will be in the middle. Most of them will be about 24 inches round. Sometimes you'll get a little bit bigger, but they come in a variety of colors and styles, right? So the most common one that we see is going to be concrete, but nowadays a lot more people are using plastic. And the reason why, concrete corrodes. Over time, that concrete's going to deteriorate. It'll stop working correctly. You'll have rebar exposed, which allows roots to basically go through the sidewalls. You get soil through the sidewalls. You can get all sorts of problems going on with concrete because sewer gas is really corrosive. So it'll chew up all that concrete until eventually it just falls apart. Nowadays, a lot of people will use plastic because it's not going to be bothered by that corrosive gas. And it's a little bit cheaper. The problem is that it's a little bit cheaper, so parts of it do break. The benefit is that most of the plastic items are actually interchangeable. So if you do break the lid or the securing point or any of the other pieces like the rings, you just dig down, replace that one little chunk rather than replacing the whole thing. So a riser should be watertight, so that way debris, groundwater, any other types of contaminants don't necessarily work their way into the septic. Now, when I use the term contaminant, I'm loosely using it because it's a septic system, right? It's all full of gross bacteria, but it's super, super important to make sure you don't let groundwater into the system. Reason why? Most of these septic systems are designed for a certain volume of water per day. So let's just say, for example, you've got a 3-bedroom home or even a 4-bedroom home. That means that system should be designed to accommodate between 450 gallons or 600 gallons of water per day. How we get that number is in our state, the state will assume 2 occupants per bedroom, and that usually gives you about 150 gallons of water per bedroom. You could argue 200 gallons of water per bedroom, but that's a little bit on the high end, right? So when you have that much volume of water, you need to figure out what you're going to do with it. And so that's where they'll decide once they do the perk test, do we need 2 drain fields, 3 drain fields, 4 drain fields, whatever. But if you design a system for 600 gallons of water per day, you put a 1250 tank or a 1500 gallon tank, right? The tank's now going to be adequately sized for that volume of water. You put 2 or 3 drain fields, which is adequately sized for that volume of water. But then you got a leaking riser where every time it rains, let's just say it puts an extra 100 gallons of water through. Okay, so now if you're using the 600 gallons of water, which most people don't, but let's just say for sake of argument, you're using the design spec. If you're using the design spec of 600 gallons and you're getting an additional 100 gallons on average from rainwater into your septic, you're going to shorten the lifespan of your absorption system. And at which point, once you fill it up and it's full of water, you're done. It's time to replace, right? So you want to avoid that additional wear and tear. It's just like for a car, right? You don't want to let the engine go an extra 4,000 miles beyond the oil change because now you're putting additional wear and tear on the engine, all right? Same thing goes with the drain fields. The drain fields are the workhorse of your septic system. They're basically what's going to make it to allow the system to continue working. If you don't take care of the drain fields, it's not going to work. It's not going to drain right. And then you're going to be up a creek without a paddle, and you're going to have to deal with all sorts of sewage problems. So what does a leaking riser look like? Well, it looks like this one, right? So if we look in here, we can see that there's soil on top of the lid, right? And then there's also going to be soil on the inside of the riser ring. The problem with that is if soil's able to get in through the riser ring, that also means that water is able to get into the riser ring, because how else does the dirt get in there? Now, an argument could be made that, well, it's every time that you open and close the lid. Sure, that's possible. But as we can see with this one, the lid is basically right flush with the surface. So the only other spot would be actually coming in through the sides, through the seals, or in between the tank and the riser itself. Back in the day with these concrete ones, they didn't really seal them. You're supposed to seal a riser to a tank so that way any kind of roots, soil, water, etc. doesn't get into it. Nobody did that back in the 70s and 80s, right? That's why nowadays I usually recommend plastic. It's a little bit easier to install. It's also way easier to ensure you get a nice watertight connection compared to the concrete. Concrete will usually take a little bit more of a beating. So like if you smack it with a mower, usually you're fine. But if you run into it with, you know, a car, you do run the risk of cracking it. But don't run over your septic with a car, and you'll be fine, right? So let's take a little bit closer look at the riser. Alrighty, so we can see here that this is our lid. The handle's missing, and somebody's gone ahead and put another little tiny handle on it. Perfectly fine. But we can see that we've got some soil on there. Additionally, if we look at these riser rings, we'll see right over here that little bit of soil that's working its way in through that crack, right? So these rings generally, the big one is generally going to be 12 inches. That one generally going to be about 6, all right? So when you see that, that means that the riser is shifted a little bit. There's no sealant on it. And we can also see right here how everything's nice and flat, right? So there's no tongue and groove, or there's no space to let the concrete kind of fill in on itself. So there's never ever actually going to be a solid watertight seal between those two sections. We can also see a little bit further, right on the base, right where it meets the tank, we've also got soil coming in. And again, if you have soil coming in, that means you have water coming in to push that soil. Is it that much? No. But is it enough that it could put additional wear and tear on the system? Yes. So whenever you're getting your septic looked at, or if you as a homeowner are looking at your septic, you want to make sure that you take a look to see what's the riser condition look like. As we can see over here, we have a little bit of rebar exposed right there, right? So that means that this riser is getting close to the end of its service life, and we want to budget for eventual replacement. All right, so recommending replacing the riser is usually the best thing to do whenever you start seeing any kind of soil get in, water getting in, or rebar existing, right? You get them into a plastic riser, and usually they'll be in much better shape. You have less risk of additional water getting into the system. If you did nothing, is it the end of the world? No, right? That's why it's a recommendation, not a requirement. It's a good idea to do, but is it something that needs to be done immediately? Probably not, right? I hope that this conversation, kind of brings a little bit more light to why you want to consider a watertight riser. If I've brought some value to you, please hit that like button, subscribe. If you have any areas of interest you want me to cover more of, leave a comment, right? I try to get to all of them as quick as I can, sometimes a little bit harder than others, but hey, leave them anyway. I'll get to them at some point, right? Till next time, guys.